America's aircraft carriers once ruled the oceans like untouchable floating kingdoms. For decades, simply hearing the words U.S. Carrier Strike Group was enough to make entire regions fall silent. But today, that era is being challenged hard. Because for the first time since World War II, there are weapons on Earth that can realistically threaten the most powerful symbols of American naval dominance: hypersonic missiles, anti-ship ballistic missiles, saturation attacks with hundreds of cruise missiles, the kind of modern firepower that doesn't care how proud a ship looks in a parade. It only cares how fast it can burn through steel. And that leads to one uncomfortable question. Are American aircraft carriers still the ultimate instrument of global power? Or are they slowly becoming the most expensive targets in history? To understand this, we need to look at what makes U.S. aircraft carriers so terrifying in the first place. The United States is the only nation on Earth that operates 11 active aircraft carriers, most of them nuclear-powered giants, each one able to carry a full air force to any ocean on the planet. This is not just military hardware, this is political gravity. Wherever a U.S. carrier arrives, diplomacy changes instantly. The American obsession with carriers didn't appear overnight. The idea of turning a ship into a floating runway was born in the U.S. because American wars are usually fought far from the American coast. Back in 1910, a plane first took off from a ship. Then, in 1911, a landing was successfully tested. By 1915, the catapult concept arrived, making aircraft operations at sea practical. From that moment on, the United States became the unquestioned leader in carrier warfare and stayed there for over a century. Over time, the U.S. built carrier classes that evolved from experimental platforms into unstoppable monsters. And the modern peak of that evolution is the USS Gerald R. Ford, CVN 78, the so-called supercarrier, the most advanced carrier ever built. The Ford class is a floating city, nearly 337 meters long, almost 78 meters wide, towering above the waterline like a moving fortress, and weighing around 100,000 tons. It can hit 30 knots, over 34 miles per hour, which is insane for something this massive. But what's truly terrifying is its power plant. 2 A1B nuclear reactors producing enormous energy output, enough to drive the entire ship and fuel future weapons like high-energy lasers. And unlike old carriers, these reactors are built for a half-century of operation on one nuclear fuel core. But here's the key detail. A carrier alone is not meant to fight alone. It travels with an entire murder squad. That's the Carrier Strike Group. One aircraft carrier supported by cruisers, destroyers, nuclear submarines, and supply ships. Depending on mission, a strike group may contain 6 to 10 warships and nearly 9,000 personnel. And it can operate for weeks without resupply. The reason this system dominated global warfare is simple: air power. If you control the skies, you control everything below. A carrier strike group can launch aircraft hundreds of miles away, strike enemy ships and coastal targets, and reposition fast enough to appear somewhere unexpected within 24 hours. It's not just a weapon. It's a mobile airbase that doesn't need permission from any country. And the carrier itself is armed with a full air wing, FA-18 Super Hornets, E-2D Hawkeye airborne early warning aircraft, helicopters for anti-submarine operations, and increasingly F-35C stealth fighters, the most advanced carrier-based stealth aircraft in the world. A single modern carrier can host dozens of fighters. In fact, one Ford class can carry more stealth aircraft than some countries have in their entire air force. This is why carriers are still seen as global power in physical form. But now we arrive at the problem. The modern battlefield is no longer what it used to be. Back in the Cold War, sinking a carrier was a nightmare-level mission. Soviet planners calculated that it could take 50 to 60 strategic bombers launching heavy supersonic missiles, with catastrophic losses expected. A full attack could lose nearly half the strike force. Even then, it might take dozens of hits unless nuclear warheads were involved. In other words, Carriers were so hard to kill that the effort itself was almost suicidal. But hypersonic weapons changed the math. China and Russia, America's main peer adversaries, have spent the last 2 decades building entire carrier-killer ecosystems. These are not just missiles. They are networks of satellites, sensors, targeting systems, submarines, bombers, and warships, all designed for one goal: putting an American carrier on the bottom of the ocean, or at least knocking it out of the war. China's most famous weapon is the DF-21D anti-ship ballistic missile. This is often called the world's first true carrier killer. Unlike cruise missiles that fly low and slow compared to ballistic weapons, the DF-21D comes from above at extreme speed. It is designed to hit moving ship groups at long range using land-based mobile launchers. Its strike range is often estimated around 1,100 miles. That range matters because it pushes carriers farther away from China's coastline, sometimes so far that their aircraft struggle to reach targets without refueling or sacrificing payload. That's the nightmare scenario for carrier warfare: surviving, but being useless. Worse, China does not rely on one missile. It relies on numbers. If China can fire a mass salvo, dozens, maybe hundreds, at once, the carrier strike group faces a deadly problem: magazine depth. Ships carry limited interceptor missiles. Once those are fired, the group becomes vulnerable. Reloading at sea is difficult. Reloading in port takes time. And in a real war, time is death. And China isn't only relying on ballistic missiles. It also has large fleets of missile boats and long-range anti-ship cruise missiles that can launch in overwhelming numbers, creating a wave of incoming threats designed to crush defenses through sheer volume. Now look at Russia. Russia's legacy anti-ship monster is the P-700 Granite missile, an enormous supersonic cruise missile originally designed to hunt American carriers. It is fast, heavy, destructive, and built to break naval defenses. Submarines like the Oscar II class can carry 24 of them. Heavy cruisers can carry 20. Even the aircraft carrier Admiral Kuznetsov carried Granite. But Russia's modern fear weapon is the Zircon hypersonic missile. Zircon is far faster and far harder to intercept. With hypersonic speed, even a few missiles could create catastrophic damage. And how many hits would it take to disable a carrier? That's where it gets horrifying. Studies and simulations suggest that 1 or 2 heavy missile hits might not sink a carrier, but could still disrupt flight operations. 3 to 5 hits might knock it into partial combat capability and force major repairs. 6 to 8 hits could destroy flight deck operations entirely. Beyond that, the ship could be so damaged that repairs become questionable or impossible. And remember, the carrier doesn't need to sink to be defeated. If it can't launch aircraft, it becomes an overpriced hulk. So, yes, carriers can be killed, or at least neutralized. Which brings us back to the big question: if carriers can be destroyed, why does America keep investing insane money in them? The answer is, carriers still matter, because they force the enemy to spend enormous resources just to threaten them. Even if China has a strong chance to attack a carrier, firing hundreds of missiles creates another dilemma. What happens after that? Missiles aren't infinite. If China burns most of its missile inventory to disable one carrier for a short time, it may be left vulnerable in other battles. Carriers function as a magnet. They pull enemy attention. They pull enemy weapons. And sometimes, simply existing forces the opponent into expensive planning. But that doesn't mean the current system is perfect. Far from it. Carrier strike groups are absurdly expensive. Maintaining a strike group can cost millions per day. Multiply that across 10 groups, and you're looking at a financial black hole. Many U.S. analysts now argue that the Navy spends too much money keeping old power alive, and not enough money preparing for future war. That's why one of the most controversial ideas inside American strategy circles is reducing carrier numbers. Some believe the U.S. doesn't need 11 carriers anymore. Some propose cutting to 8. Some go further, down to 4. while shifting investment into hypersonic weapons, unmanned aircraft, submarines, and distributed missile networks. Because here is the harsh truth. Aircraft carriers may still be the strongest symbol of power, but symbols die when technology catches them. Battleships once ruled the seas too, until aircraft made them obsolete almost overnight. And the hypersonic age may be doing the same thing to the aircraft carrier. So, what do you think? Are American aircraft carriers still the ultimate weapon of global dominance? Or are we witnessing the slow decline of the carrier era, one missile test at a time? Write your opinion in the comments. And if you enjoyed this deep military breakdown, don't forget to like and subscribe, because the next era of warfare has already begun.